What would you do if you had to mix two sources of video during a company presentation in the early 2000s? Or how would you run the video for a live musical act with projected effects? Chances are you would probably be using a Roland Edirol V4 video mixer. These originally came out in 2002 and were quite common. These things can transition, mix, and add effects to two different video inputs at the same time. It accepts 4 inputs, but only 2 of them can be used in the output at any given time. They support Roland V-Link, not that I'm going to be using that because I don't have any other equipment compatible with that, but that is a thing that this can use. The Edirol V4 really is a product of its time. I was 3 years old at the time, of 2002, so I have zero frame of reference, but the world was quickly going from analog video to digital video, and the V4 was thrown in the market just before it became less feasible to use analog video. As such, the V4 only handles analog inputs through composite or S-video connections. A modern equivalent of this would be the Roland V4EX, which actually takes analog signals, but it uses HDMI as well. So you get analog and digital. So why do I have one of these? What do I use it for? I don't run any company-wide presentations. I don't really do live music stuff with it. What's the point? Well, I actually use this for video feedback loops. The premise is relatively straightforward. Here's a quick graph. The camera is pointed at a monitor that is connected to it, so the monitor is showing what the camera sees, which is itself. This creates a loop, which can generate random patterns and colors. It creates this psychedelic effect, which I think looks kinda cool.
I just think they're neat.
Here it is recreated with a security camera and a monitor I have. We'll be using these for examples later on too. I don't have much space at the moment, so I set it up all on the floor. The camera is connected directly to the input of the TV, so the video signal would change depending on which camera you use, the TV you have, the settings for contrast, saturation, brightness on the TV, and a whole bunch of other factors. For now though, this is a very simple feedback loop. But we can make it more complex and add more cool stuff to it. This is where something like a Roland Edirol V4 mixer would come into play. We can mix in different signals, effects, and transitions to the display. We have 2 video inputs to use, so we'll put the camera on one of them and a Videonics title maker I have on the other. The title maker is basically a text generator. I have another video on it if you're interested. It's set to display Hello YouTube right now. One other thing to point out before we go further is that the V4 has multiple outputs, but one of them has a display for the actual settings and menu options, so it's best to have at least one monitor plus whatever output you are wanting. You can output it to a TV, a projector, a VCR, stuff like that. Now I'm not going to get bogged down with how each effect and transition works, as some can only be enabled by themselves, whereas other ones have the ability to work with others within the Edirol V4. The manual is a fantastic reference for understanding how this really works and can be used, and it also contains graphical depictions on what the effects and transitions look like and work. There's a link to it in the description. I'm mostly going to be toying around with it today though, showcasing some random stuff I came up with. The T-bar can be used to mix and transition the 2 inputs smoothly, and it's labeled for inputs A and B. We have 8 different presets we can configure, and you can change things like which effects are associated with which buttons, so they don't have to match what's labeled on the mixer itself. You can swap them around. This is really helpful because it is kind of a pain to configure, because you have to go menu diving and change each button and effect individually. So the fact that they have 8 different presets should keep you covered if you have one you particularly like. There's also the ability to sync the Edirol to a specific BPM for music, and you can change whether or not that transitions between A and B based on a pattern, mix, or something else. Right here it is set to 120 beats per minute, and I threw together some loops. Some people like to circuit bend these to generate even more insane patches and glitches, but in my opinion you have to be pretty confident in your skills before poking around a device that costs around $300 to $400. You won't catch me doing that. So this won't be the most in-depth video of all time, but I just think it's a really cool device. I already own the bigger brother to the V4, the V8, which has even more effects, transitions, and all that good stuff. It's a useful tool if you're into jockeying for live music, or are just into older analog video stuff. You can plug a VCR into this thing and watch all the movies on it, and mess with how it looks. Go crazy. But yeah, that's about it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.